Welcome to The Explainer, where we dig into fascinating sources and bring them to life for you. So let's travel back in time. We're going to Peking, 1902. Today, we are cracking open a forgotten book that's basically a time capsule from the turn of the 20th century, right in the heart of Imperial China. The book is called The Little Girl Lost by Eleanor Raper. And check out that subtitle, A Tale for Little Girls. Sounds simple, right? But trust me, this story reveals so much more about the world it came from than you'd ever expect. Okay, let's dive right in. So, here's our game plan. We're going to follow the story of this young English girl through a pretty wild adventure. We'll see her go from this super sheltered life to a daring escape. And along the way, we'll unpack what her journey really tells us about this forgotten era. All right, first up, A Girl in Peking. Let's get to know our main character, Nelly Gray. She's a 9-year-old English girl with a twist. She's never actually set foot in England. So Nelly was actually born in China, and her whole world was this place called the British Legation compound. You gotta picture this. It's like a huge walled-off bubble of Western life. It had its own houses, a church, even tennis courts, all plopped right down inside the city of Peking. And even though she was living inside these walls, her world was surprisingly international. I mean, look at her friends. You've got English, Scottish, German, American, and also Manchu Chinese kids from other diplomatic families. This meant she had this really unique, multilingual childhood. In fact, Nelly was totally fluent in both English and Chinese, and she could just switch between those two worlds without even thinking about it. Okay, section 2, lost and captured. So one evening, this really protected life she has, it gets completely turned upside down by one simple mistake that leads to a pretty terrifying situation. It all starts so innocently. Nelly and her friend, little Yi, are just trying to meet her dad for a pony ride, something they'd done before. But this time, they slip out of the compound gate, and almost immediately they're lost. They get surrounded by this big, curious crowd, and then this woman comes up, seeming all kind and offering to help them escape. But it's a total trap. The door locks behind them, and just like that, they're captives. And the motive? A reward. So now we're at an unlikely friendship. Nelly's situation looks pretty bleak, right? They take away her Western clothes, dress her up like a Chinese kid, but it's in this dark moment that she finds a glimmer of hope, a really unexpected ally. And this slide, wow, it really lays out the contrast, doesn't it? I mean, look at this. Her old life in the Legation was all shady verandas, tennis courts, lessons, fun and games. Her new life? Stone floors, paper windows, and being locked in a tiny courtyard. All that freedom she just took for granted is, poof, gone. Now it's just fear and being totally, utterly alone. The only bright spot in all of this is a woman named Anching. Now, get this. She's the daughter-in-law of the people who captured Nelly, but she's incredibly kind and sympathetic. Turns out, Anching is trapped too, in her own unhappy situation with the family. So she kind of sees a kindred spirit in this scared little English girl. All right, next section, a daring escape plan. So, weeks drag on and turn into a whole month. But then, hope arrives. And it comes from a place you'd never expect, right over the compound wall. So to keep her spirits up, what does Nelly do? She sings hymns that she learned back at the Legation church. And one day, a neighbor, a Christian man named Cheng, hears this familiar tune being sung in Chinese. He's like, wait a minute. He gets curious, grabs a ladder, climbs up to look over the wall, and that's when he sees them and realizes what's happening. And boom, just like that, a secret escape plan is born. Cheng and his son, Chi-Fu, decide they're going to stage a rescue. The plan itself is pretty simple, but definitely daring. They'll wait for a moonlit night, the kids will climb out their window, and Cheng and his son will be on the other side of the wall, ready to haul him over in a big basket. Okay, on to the rescue itself. An unexpected rescue, you could say. Because just as they have this great plan all set up, the main captor, a guy named Hung Lee, comes home out of the blue. And in a single instant, everything changes. So Hung Lee hears about this massive reward being offered for the girls, and he gets greedy. He's not going to wait around. He decides, nope, I'm taking them to Peking myself right now to claim that cash. So the whole basket over the wall plan, it's ruined. And instead, a really tense and chaotic journey back to the city kicks off. And this timeline, it just perfectly shows how much of this rescue came down to pure chance. It's this crazy chain of events. First, Hung Lee's mule just drops dead on the road, leaving them stranded. Then, Cheng and Shifu, who'd been secretly following them the whole time, find them. Then comes the absolute heartbreaker. Nelly actually spots her own father riding by, but he doesn't see her, and the shock just makes her faint. But then, in this final heroic moment, Shifu literally runs out, stops Mr. Gray's pony, and points him back toward his daughter. So, Nelly is finally safe. And the way the story wraps up tells us so much about the cultural dynamics of that time. Let's look at the fates and reflections. So what happens next is fascinating. Nelly's dad confronts Hung Lee, the captor, but instead of, throwing him in jail, a totally different kind of justice happens. It's all financial. First, he gives the massive 500 tael reward to Cheng and Shifu for their help. Then, and this part is wild, he turns to Hung Lee and pays him 50 taels. And what for? To literally buy Anching's freedom from the family. It just says so much about the power dynamics, that her liberty was something that could be bought and sold to get her out of that awful marriage. And so this little forgotten children's book ends not just with a rescue, but with this pretty remarkable cultural journey. Think about it. Anching goes from being a captive wife in this small Chinese household to a free woman living as Nelly's companion by the seaside in Brighton, England. What a change. So what can a forgotten children's book like this really teach us? Well, The Little Girl Lost is so much more than just an adventure story. It's this incredible little window, isn't it? A window into the super insulated world of colonial families, the massive cultural barriers that existed, and maybe most importantly, the surprising human connections that can pop up, even in the most impossible situations. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only.